10 songs, 45 years of recordings, and since we lost him in July 2025, every single one of them hits differently. Here's what this list is really about. Not the backbiting, not the reality TV. The songs, the ones that prove Ozzy Osbourne was something nobody gave him credit for being. A songwriter who could outlast almost everyone. Let's get into it. Number 10, Flying High Again, 1981. Diary of a Madman. We're starting in 1981. Second record, Diary of a Madman, which I'll say right now is one of the 5 greatest heavy metal albums ever made. And Flying High Again is the song that opens that argument. You know the riff. Even if you haven't thought about this song in years, even if it's been sitting in the back of the catalog while you've been living your life, the moment Randy Rhoads hits that opening, something switches on. It's almost physiological, like your body remembers it before your brain has a chance to catch up. But here's what I think about when I hear it. Not the guitar, the lyric. Mama's gonna worry I've been a bad, bad boy. That's Ozzy Osbourne describing himself. Not a character, not a stage persona. Himself, a guy who'd been fired from one of the biggest bands on the planet, who was somewhere in the middle of a serious drinking problem, who by most accounts probably shouldn't have been standing upright in front of a microphone at all. And he's singing about all of it like it's an adventure, like the chaos is the point, like being the bad boy who can't slow down is a thing to be celebrated, not confessed. And here's the part that most people don't know. Those words weren't written by Ozzy. They were written by bassist Bob Daisley, the same man who, along with Randy Rhoads, made up the actual creative engine of that early solo band. Daisley had a gift, a specific, almost uncanny gift for climbing inside Ozzy's actual life and finding the words that Ozzy couldn't find himself. Flying High Again is a perfect example. The words are Daisley's, the melody is Ozzy's, and the feeling that's for that specific cocktail of recklessness and self-awareness, of being completely out of control and completely at peace with it. That's something only that combination could have produced. And if you've ever been in a moment where everything was going sideways and somehow you were the most alive you'd ever felt, you don't need me to explain what this song is about. You already know. Randy's guitar work in this track deserves its own conversation. He was 24 years old, 24, and he was already playing things that guitar teachers still argue over in lesson rooms. There's a melodic sophistication in the lead work on Flying High Again that gets undervalued because everyone's focused on Crazy Train. But this is the song where Randy sounds like he's operating on a frequency nobody else can quite access. Number 10, and that is the bottom of this list. Let that sit for a moment. Number 9 is where the real complications start. Number 9, Bark at the Moon, 1983. This is the one where the story gets hard before it gets good. March 19th, 1982, Leesburg, Florida. A small plane that took off early in the morning while the band was asleep at a nearby hotel came down on tour property and killed 3 people. One of them was Randy Rhoads. He was 25 years old. And if you were paying attention to heavy metal at that moment, if you were a rock fan in 1982, you understood that something irreplaceable had just left the room. Not just from Ozzy's band, from music altogether. You don't replace that, you can't. You just figure out what comes next and hope it holds. What came next was Jake E. Lee. A guitarist with a completely different character, less classical, more predatory, more raw, in a way that wasn't trying to echo what Randy had done. Doers, and that was the smart call, the only call, really. The first song anyone heard from this new era was Bark at the Moon. And here's what gets me about this song. It's a song about a werewolf. Literally, creature that terrorizes a village, gets killed, and then claws its way back out of the earth to do it all over again. Ozzy himself said the title came from an old joke he used to tell. The punchline isn't fit for polite conversation. But here's the thing. The metaphor wasn't accidental. Not entirely. He was the guy who'd been told he was finished, fired from his own band, lost the guitarist that had revived him. And here he was, back from the dead, coming to terrorize the village again. Jakey Lee's riff is relentless, driving and a little bit menacing in a way that's distinctly different from what Randy brought. Dearda doesn't try to be Randy. And Ozzy sounds ferocious on it, not like a man in grief, but like a man with something left to prove. Some people will tell you this song marks the beginning of a more cartoonish phase, that the werewolf makeup and the MTV rotation were the start of Ozzy losing the plot. And they're not completely wrong, but I'd push back. Bark at the Moon is Ozzy at his most defiant. And defiance, when it's real, when it's coming from somewhere genuine, that makes better art than almost anything else. If you were a rock kid in 1983, this song came out of a speaker somewhere and something shifted. You felt it. Number 8 is where I need you to stay with me, because this one is genuinely complicated.
Let's look at the numbers. Only 9% of you are actually subscribed. Honestly, that's tough to see. Our team spends days hunting down archives and verifying every single fact just to tell these stories right. If you've made it this far into the video, you're clearly part of the community, so please hit subscribe. It costs nothing and helps us immensely. Now, for those already subscribed, very few of you have made the jump to our membership, and that's a hard pill to swallow because you're the ones who know our value best. If this channel has moved you or inspired you, consider joining. It's the price of one coffee, but it's the literal fuel for this channel. Let's keep this alive together. Back to the story.
Number 8, Suicide Solution, 1980. Blizzard of Oz. I'm asking you to hear this one out. Suicide Solution. The most misunderstood song in Ozzy Osbourne's entire catalog, and one of the most important he ever made. Let's start with what it actually is. 1980, Blizzard of Oz, co-written by Ozzy, Randy Rhoads, and Bob Daisley, with Daisley again as the lyricist. The solution in the title is not a method. It's alcohol. Wine is fine, but whiskey's quicker. Suicide is slow with liquor. That's not an instruction. That's a diagnosis. Here's where the story splits. Daisley has said he wrote the lyrics with Ozzy's own drinking in mind. The slow, grinding self-destruction of someone choosing the bottle over everything else, including themselves. Ozzy has said he was thinking about Bon Scott, AC/DC's frontman, who died of alcohol poisoning in February 1980, just months before the record came out. The truth is probably both. It's a song about recognizing what alcohol actually is when you strip away the celebration. It's a warning, a dark, honest, reluctant warning. And then in 1986, the parents of a teenager who died by suicide sued Ozzy, claiming this song was responsible. The case went all the way to court. A judge dismissed it, but the damage was already done. Not to Ozzy's career, but to the song's reputation. For years, Suicide Solution got described as pro-suicide, as dangerous, as irresponsible, by people who had never actually listened to what it was saying. Listen to Randy's guitar on this track and you'll hear something that matches the lyric perfectly. It's patient, heavy, but measured. There's a deliberateness to it, the slow accumulation of something that destroys you from the inside out. And Ozzy's vocals is one of his most honest performances on that first record. He's not performing menace, he's performing recognition. Like the thing in the song is something he's seen from the inside. Some of y'all have only ever heard this song in the context of a headline. If that's you, go back. Listen to what it's actually saying about alcohol, about the stories we tell ourselves while we're going down. Number 7. This one is about triumph, and it's the most underrated song on this entire list. Number 7. Over the Mountain, 1981. Diary of a Madman. This is the one I keep coming back to when I want to argue that Ozzy Osbourne had one of the great creative runs in rock history. Over the Mountain opens Diary of a Madman. And Lee Kerslake's drum intro, that tumbling, thunderous, almost chaotic flurry of fills that kicks the whole thing off, is one of the great album openings in the history of heavy music. You've heard it. Even if you've never tracked down the record, you've been in the room with someone who played it, and you know that feeling when a song announces itself before a word has been sung. What makes Over the Mountain something beyond a great opener is what it does structurally. The galloping riff, relentless, rhythmically sophisticated, sits underneath a vocal melody that soars above it without competing with it. Randy Rhoads' solo is technically remarkable in the way his best work always was, but what separates it here is the restraint. He could have shredded for another 30 seconds. He chose not to. He gave you exactly what you needed and then got out of the way. That's maturity in a 24-year-old that most musicians never find. And here's the thing about this song that I think gets overlooked completely. It isn't dark. Not by Ozzy standards. The lyrics are about transcendence, about going somewhere beyond the ordinary world. Flying and I'm free. There's almost a joy in it, a genuine, wide open elation. And when you consider that this is the same man who was, by most accounts, barely keeping it together during this period, still drinking, still chaotic, and still uncertain about what his life was becoming, there's something that hits a little differently about a man who couldn't articulate his hope in conversation, managing to put it into music. Sometimes the best honest thing a person can say is the thing they can only say in a song. If you were a teenager in the early 80s, record player going in your bedroom, and someone handed you this album, Over the Mountain was the song that told you everything you needed to know. Not about Ozzy, about what music could do. Number 6, this one is going to surprise some of you in terms of placement. And I think once you hear the reason, you'll understand it. Number 6, Mama, I'm Coming Home, 1991.
Mama, I'm coming home.
No More Tears. I already know some of you are doing the math and saying, really? That high? A ballad? Stay with me. It's a No More Tears album. Ozzy is 42 years old. He has survived things that should have ended him on multiple occasions. The firing from Sabbath, the years of addiction, the loss of Randy Rhoads, a stretch through the mid to late 80s where the music was competent but the spark was harder to find. And then this record arrives. And this song in particular lands in the middle of it like something quietly extraordinary. Mama, I'm Coming Home. 12-string acoustic guitars at the front, a vocal melody that is so direct, so completely unguarded that the first time you heard it, you might have done a double take. Is this the same person who sang Bark at the Moon? Yes, it always was. Here's the fact that I think most people still don't know. This song was co-written by Zakk Wylde, who'd been Ozzy's guitarist since 1987, and Lemmy Kilmister of Motorhead, the man whose band played so loud that the crew needed hearing protection, the man whose idea of a quiet night was something nobody has ever convincingly described, that Lemmy helped write a quiet, achingly sincere ballad about going home to the woman who saved your life. And that's exactly what the song is. It's about Sharon, Ozzy's wife and manager, the person most responsible for the fact that a solo career happened at all. She found him in a hotel suite where he was drinking himself toward a very specific kind of ending. She believed in him when the industry had written him off. She drove the thing forward when he couldn't. And years later, he wrote her a love song with Lemmy Kilmister. The specific detail of Lemmy's involvement matters to me because it says something true about how music actually gets made, not through genre rules or image management, through trust, through showing up in a room with people you care about and making something honest together. At the Back to the Beginning concert in Birmingham on July 5th, 2025, Ozzy's final performance, he sat on a throne because he could no longer walk without assistance. And he sang this song, the whole thing, and 60,000 people sang every word back to him.
I could be right, I could be wrong. It hurts.
And if you've seen the footage, you know that what you're watching is not a rock concert moment. It's something else, something harder to name. I think that's worth number 6 on any list.
Mama, I'm coming home.
Number 5, Shot in the Dark, 1986.
But it doesn't seem right. Something there I can't believe.
The Ultimate Sin. This is the entry that's going to require a little context because the story behind this song is almost as interesting as the song itself. Ozzy is at the Betty Ford Center. He's gone in for substance abuse treatment, not for the first time, but seriously this time. And while he's there, guitarist Jake E. Lee and bassist Bob Daisley are doing the early songwriting for what will become The Ultimate Sin. Without Ozzy in the room, 2 of the musicians who'd helped carry the catalog forward writing on their own because the frontman is in treatment. By the time the album actually starts taking shape properly, there's a lineup shuffle. Daisley leaves over a publishing dispute. He'd already been through that once on the first 2 records and wasn't willing to go through it again. And a new bassist comes in, Phil Soussan. And when someone asks Soussan if he has any songs to contribute, he plays a demo he's been carrying around for a couple of years, something he wrote when he was in his previous band, Wildlife. That song becomes Shot in the Dark. Now, here's what I find genuinely fascinating about this. Ozzy Osbourne himself has said he hates The Ultimate Sin. He called it his worst album, said the production felt wrong, said everything sounded the same, said he'd redo it entirely if he could. And he's probably right about most of that. But, and this matters, Shot in the Dark was Ozzy's first solo single to chart on the Billboard Hot 100, not Top 40 mainstream rock. He'd been doing that for years. The actual pop chart, number 68, his first entry ever. That's the kind of irony you can't write. The song he didn't write on the album he hated from a period he was barely present for, that's the one that cracked open the mainstream for the first time. Jake E. Lee's guitar work here is worth talking about on its own terms. The riff has a drive and a melodic hook that sits right in the pocket between hard rock and something that could actually get radio play. And Lee walks that line with real skill. He was an underappreciated player in Ozzy's catalog, caught in the impossible position of following Randy Rhoads and somehow still managing to create something that stood on its own. Here's what's a little heartbreaking about Shot in the Dark. The song has been stripped from Ozzy's greatest hits compilations since the early 2000s due to ongoing publishing disputes. If you go to his Essential Collection, it's not there. Prince of Darkness, not there. Memoirs of a Madman, not there. A song that gave him his first pop chart hit, scrubbed from his own history, and Ozzy continued to play it live anyway, sometimes for years at a time, before drifting away from it again. That's a complicated relationship with a song, but complicated relationships tend to produce interesting stories. Number 4 is where the second great creative peak of Ozzy's career announces itself. Number 4, No More Tears, 1991. No More Tears. I want to make an argument here that I think deserves to be made directly. Ozzy Osbourne had a second creative peak, not a comeback, not a nostalgia act, cashing in on old goodwill, an actual second period where the songwriting matched and in some specific moments exceeded what the Blizzard of Oz records had done a decade earlier. And No More Tears is the center of that argument. The record of the same name. Zakk Wylde on guitar, a player who'd arrived in 1987 and brought a completely different energy to the sound. Less classical than Randy, more blues-drenched, more physically powerful in the way he attacked the instrument. And Bob Daisley back in the writing fold, which matters enormously, because Daisley brings something specific every time he's in the room. The bass intro on this song is one of the great openings in hard rock. 4 notes descending unhurried, Daisley pulling you in before the guitars arrive, and when Zakk's main riff finally drops, something locks into place. You settle. You know you're going somewhere worth going. Here's the thing about what No More Tears is actually about that I think sometimes gets softened in the retelling. It's about a serial killer. Ozzy confirmed it. The narrator is predatory, cold, patient, inevitable, and the lyric sits inside that character with an unsettling specificity. And here's what's genuinely brilliant about the composition. The hook is catchy, uncomfortably, almost embarrassingly catchy, given the subject matter. You find yourself singing along, and then you catch yourself thinking about what you're singing. That tension jam between the darkness of the content and the appeal of the melody is not accidental. That's craft. And then the bridge, the tempo slows, piano comes in, the whole character of the song shifts into something almost orchestral, and you think you've settled into a completely different song. And then it crashes back into the main riff with a force that's physical. You feel it before you understand it. Ozzy has said it felt like a gift, like the song arrived mostly whole. And the bridge in particular came from somewhere he couldn't fully explain. And if you're nodding right now, if you know exactly what I mean, you've probably got a specific memory attached to this song. A specific room, a specific time of night, a specific feeling. Some of y'all know the one I'm talking about. Zakk Wylde's solo is patient and then volcanic. He waits for the exact right moment and then he goes. That's the craft too. Knowing when to hold it and knowing when to let it go entirely. Number 3 is the song I consider Ozzy's single greatest artistic achievement. And I'll tell you why. Number 3, Diary of a Madman, 1981. If you've spent serious time with this album, you knew this was going to be here. Diary of a Madman, the title track of the second record, 6 minutes and 22 seconds. And almost none of it sounds like anything else Ozzy Osbourne ever made, before or after. It opens quietly. Randy Rhoads playing arpeggiated chords. The song moves through unusual time signatures, including passages in 7/8 for anyone keeping count, and the whole thing feels like it's caught between two places, like it can't decide if it's a ballad or something about to tear itself apart. Then strings arrive, then a choir, and you think you know where it's going. You don't. Here's what Randy does on this track that I consider the single most underrated guitar performance of his career. He restrains himself completely and deliberately on an album where he could have shredded through every song and no one would have complained, where the audience would have loved him for it. He builds this piece brick by brick. He disappears into the arrangement until the architecture is fully standing. And then he strikes. And when he strikes, it means something because you've been waiting for it without quite realizing you were waiting. The lyrics are Daisley again, and here's what he wrote for Ozzy to inhabit. Voices in the darkness scream away my mental health. That's not horror movie language, that's clinical, that's autobiography, real, unflinching description of what living inside a disintegrating mind actually feels like. And in 1981, putting that on a heavy metal record was genuinely unusual. Not because the genre couldn't handle darkness, because that kind of specific interior, first-person vulnerability was almost nowhere in the genre. Most metal was outward. This was inward. Ozzy sings it like he knows the terrain, because he did. Here's something I didn't know until I started digging into the making of this record. The song was genuinely difficult to produce. The time signature shifts created real technical problems in the studio. The orchestra and choir sessions were expensive and complicated, and Randy was pushing the entire production towards something the band wasn't entirely certain they could land. That tension, that are we actually going to pull this off? You can hear it in the finished recording. It's alive inside the song. And that aliveness is part of why the song is what it is. Diary of a Madman was released in November 1981. Randy Rhoads died on March 19, 1982. He was 25 years old. He had been with Ozzy for roughly 2.5 years. In that time, they made 2 albums, 2 of the greatest heavy metal records ever recorded. The silence that came after is still inside this song. You can feel it if you listen to the right way. Number 2, this is the one with 2 of the greatest guitar solos in rock history on a single track. Number 2, Mr. Crowley, 1980. Blizzard of Oz. This is where I want to tell you something about how this song actually works, because Mr. Crowley gets filed under Ozzy's occult song, and I think that framing misses what makes it extraordinary. Blizzard of Oz. The subject is Aleister Crowley, occultist, author, mystic, and according to himself, the wickedest man in the world. Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin was famously fascinated by Crowley's writings. The mythology around him was, and still is, enormous. And Ozzy's song is not what most people assume it is. He's not praising Crowley. He's not celebrating him. The lyric is more like a confrontation, an interrogation from someone who genuinely wants to know, what was it really? Did you talk to the dead? What went on in your head? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're curious ones. And that ambiguity. Is this reverence? Is this challenge? Is this warning? Is what gives the song its atmosphere. But here's the structural thing that separates Mr. Crowley from everything else on that debut record. It doesn't open with a guitar. It opens with a Hammond organ. Don Airey plays this extended, almost liturgical intro, something that feels like the beginning of a classical piece, or like you've walked into a ceremony already in progress and Randy Rhoads doesn't touch a string for the first minute and a half. That was the intention. Create a sense of ceremony, build a space that you've been invited into, not jumped on. And then Randy comes in, And two things happen simultaneously. First, you understand immediately that this is not a standard rock guitarist. And not because of the speed. There are fast players everywhere because of taste. Every note on Mr. Crowley is exactly the right note. Not one more, not one less. The song never wastes a moment of his playing. And then the solos. There are two of them, both considered among the great rock solos ever recorded. And here's what's remarkable. They're completely different in character. The first builds, it's lyrical, searching, almost like a question being asked. The second detonates. It arrives at a destination the first one was reaching toward. And between them, the verse returns, which creates this sense of earned anticipation. You know something is coming. You don't know exactly what. And when it arrives, it exceeds what you were ready for. Here's what gets me about Ozzy's vocal performance specifically. He sounds genuinely unsettled, not performatively strange, genuinely uncertain, like a man who started asking a question and isn't sure he wants the answer. And that ambiguity, that honest uncertainty underneath the grand production and the two guitar solo architecture, that's what makes this song last. You can't quite pin down what Ozzy believes about the subject, and that unresolved tension is something you carry out of the song with you 45 years later. Still feels like the beginning of something. Number 1, the most important guitar riff in the history of heavy music, and I said what I said. Number 1, Crazy Train, 1980. Blizzard of Oz. Before you go to the comments to argue about the order, hear me out. Not because the argument isn't interesting, but because the story of this song is something most people don't know the half of. Summer, 1979, West Hollywood. Ozzy Osbourne is living in a hotel suite he can barely afford, drinking through boxes of beer, barely seeing anyone, having been fired from Black Sabbath for the second time. By most accounts, he was not long for the music industry or for much else. The man who'd been the voice of one of the biggest bands in rock music was sitting in a room, losing himself on purpose. And then a bassist named Bob Daisley made a call that changed everything. He convinced Ozzy to fire the musicians he'd started rehearsing with and build something new. And the first audition that really mattered was a young guitarist from California, ex-member of a band called Quiet Riot, who almost didn't show up. He'd been hounded by phone to go audition, and he almost said no. He finally went just to stop being called. His name was Randy Rhoads. He was 23 years old. And when he walked into the Jet Records offices in late 1979, Bob Daisley remembers seeing a slight, perfectly put together young man with manicured nails and fitted clothes. Nothing about the appearance suggested what was about to come out of his hands. They ended up rehearsing at Ozzy's house in Staffordshire, England. And in those early sessions, Randy started playing a riff, something that wasn't in the usual metal keys, something that moved differently. Ciao, and here's the detail I love. Randy had an effects pedal that malfunctioned. When it was switched on and running through the amp, it made a chugging rhythmic sound, even when he wasn't actively playing. Bob Daisley heard it and said, "Randy, sounds like a train." And Randy, who was an avid collector of toy trains and had been traveling around England hunting down models since arriving, Randy smiled, and they built the song around it. That's how Crazy Train got its name. A broken effects pedal and a guitarist who loved model trains. Now, the song, the riff itself, all music described it as making use of the full minor scale in a way that hadn't been heard since Ritchie Blackmore's best work with Deep Purple. Tom Morello, the guitarist from Rage Against the Machine, has talked about the first time he heard it packed into the back of someone's mom's hatchback. He said by the time the song was over, he was thinking, what just happened? He called Randy Rhoads the greatest hard rock guitar player of all time. Tom Morello said that. The lyric is about the Cold War, about the particular dread of 1980, the sense that civilization was on a track nobody had voted for, running towards something nobody could see clearly, and the controls had been left unattended. Crazy train of souls cast the stone. It was Daisley's lyric shaped with Ozzy and Randy, and somehow a very specific anxiety from a very specific historical moment became universal. Every generation since 1980 has found themselves in some version of that feeling. The train is always running, it's always going too fast. Nobody is ever sure who's driving. On its original release, Crazy Train peaked at number 49 in the UK, a relatively modest chart position for a debut single. But the tour that followed, the Blizzard of Oz tour, turned the song into something much larger than its chart position suggested. Audiences heard it live and understood it immediately. It was a statement of intent that proved itself in the room. Randy Rhoads died in March 1982, 2 years after this song was recorded. And in the years that followed, Ozzy would occasionally hear the isolated stems of the recording, the raw guitar track, alone in the mix, and it would undo him completely. On a television show, years later, he listened to Randy's solo played back in isolation for the first time since 1980. You could watch his face go somewhere no camera should probably be allowed to follow. "It's bittersweet," he said. Randy died not long after that. It's like going back to a good time, but yet a really horrible time at the same time. I only wish he could have been around a little bit longer. After Ozzy's own death in July 2025, Crazy Train entered the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 for the first time, peaking at number 39. 45 years after it was recorded in a rehearsal space in Staffordshire with a broken effects pedal and a guitarist who loved model trains, the song finally reached the mainstream chart that had never ranked it. There's a justice in that, and a sadness in that, and a rightness in that.